recording.
Hi, everyone. It's Lin Bouthillier from linbouthillier.com. I'm a certified trauma recovery coach, and I'd like to welcome you to another episode of my ongoing series entitled Monogamous at 13. This is the story of my trauma and abuse history for the purpose of sharing it from dual perspective, one as the trauma and abuse survivor and one as a mental health practitioner who is an expert on trauma. And all certified trauma recovery coaches are mental health professionals who are experts on trauma. So the whole point of this series is to help, please, I forgot to silence my phone. The entire point of the whole series is for me to be able to share what has occurred in my life so that I can help other people understand what trauma is, what the after effects of trauma are, what are the family dynamics that can be especially traumatic, and all the different forms of trauma that there are. And the most important part of the whole project, the whole message is you are designed a certain way to be able to have responses to trauma. But even more important than that, you are able to heal your trauma. You're not just able to heal the trauma, but you're able to heal from the trauma. And we can't undo time. We can't alter time and space realities, but we absolutely can get to know ourselves so much better and have that connection to self. And when we repair our connection to self, or maybe even start one that we never had in the first place, and then that is the first step. So connection, reconnection cannot be stressed enough for trauma survivors, because the conduit through which healing comes will always be connection to self, connection to others, connection to community, connection to the environment, connection to our world, and ultimately connection to the universe. Now, one of the things that's a very common misunderstanding when I begin to speak about reconnection, and it's so important that I clarify this for my viewers who are trauma survivors, and for those of you who are not trauma survivors, but you want to help someone who is a trauma survivor. There's a big misunderstanding that happens in trauma recovery, and that is that when we speak about connection to others, please don't hear that as the trauma coach wants you to reconnect to someone who harmed you. That is absolutely not the reconnection that we're speaking about. We don't always advocate for going full no contact and never contacting or speaking to that person again, a complete and total emotional cutoff. But sometimes when abuse is at a certain level, yes, that is necessary, but it's never our choice. It's always the client's choice. But when we speak about reconnection, especially the part where it's reconnection to others, what we mean by that is reconnection to others who are safe, people who are kind, people who are empathetic, people who are compassionate, people who not just express compassion for themselves and compassion for others, but compassion for all people who are just simply for the fact that we're human. Compassionate to all creatures, compassionate towards our environment. That might sound odd to you, but the more you learn about trauma recovery, yes, we begin to feel compassion for our environment as well, meaning we're not so keen on the idea of people who are abusive doing abuse to the environment that we live in, corrupting the environment, being careless with environment, being careless with resources, things like that. We begin to attune more, and the more we attune to ourselves, to our environment, to other people, to the world, to the universe, then we begin to have more of a concern. And I'm not saying an unhealthy concern or an obsession. I'm saying it's much more of an awareness of what we want compared to what we do not want. And then when our trauma is healed, we feel much more likelihood of being engaged in a healthy way in all of these different areas. Well, one of the ways that I'd like to speak about today, how do I say this? I'm fumbling for the right words for a moment, so sorry about that. Before we begin, just want to pause here and say, as always, we're speaking about trauma. That naturally means there's going to be a trigger warning on the video. So this is the trigger warning right now. And today I'm going to be speaking about shame and about a medical condition and how shame and this medical condition kind of intersect or collide. and also about the trauma component of this. So shame, a medical condition, and trauma, and these three things converging. A lot of my videos have three things converging in them. You might notice that pattern. But I have my grounding tool in my hand, my favorite little holy stone, which is from a beach on Lake Erie. And I hope that you have something that's nearby you or something that you hold that will help you to stay connected to your body. The whole point of a grounding tool is for our system to recognize while we're doing our trauma recovery work or while we are experiencing our daily life, to have some way to remind our nervous system that it's connected to a body and that all of our body is connected to our nervous system and that all of our feelings reside in the body. Okay, every single feeling that we have resides in the body. Some of you might be going, I've never heard that before, but it's true. And the first time I heard it, I thought that can't be right, but it is true. In order for us to feel, we must have a body. And all of our feelings are stored in the body. And today I will be speaking about how news that I received immediately gave me feelings in my body. And it was traumatic and it happened yesterday. So I'd like to share that with you now, okay? So, and Monogamous at 13 is a project that I started because I wanted to share what goes on in my life as a case study. And because certain things happened to me that were highly traumatic, and it just blew the doors off my privacy. When I had a smear campaign happen, not just one, but a couple of them. And some people are really good at smear campaigns. And it reminds me of the old Ed Sullivan show, where those nighttime variety shows that we used to love in the 60s and 70s, they might have on somebody who was a plate spinner. And in case you've never seen one, these are people that would come out on stage and they would be spinning plates and put them on, they'd be spinning on a stick. It's a stick that they're holding, and they get them going, and they can do all kinds of fascinating stuff with that. But some people can do smear campaigns like a plate spinner, have several of them going on at the same time, and they can do it without missing a beat and without no sweat, just absolutely cool as a cucumber doing that. And you might never even know that they're doing it because they're so adept at, well, let's just use one phrase for it, master manipulator. Okay, this is a master manipulator who can get all kinds of stuff efficiently done behind everybody's back, or your back, my back. And we won't know until what I call the big explosion happens, the big ta-da moment that it was their payoff, the thing that they're doing it all for, because nobody does that unless they want a payoff. And for a highly narcissistic person, of low conscience, low empathy, low impulse control, a person who has very impaired or rudimentary ability to feel remorse or express remorse for what they do. Low conscience, people with low conscience or no conscience, it doesn't bother them at all to be doing things that most of us, we would be mortified if we ever did it to somebody once. We would just be going, what is wrong with me? Why would I ever do something like that to someone? Why would I ever intentionally cause somebody heartache, pain, embarrassment, humiliation, to have their life just all out in the open for everybody else to just, rifle through like it's somebody's sock drawer. Just Just everybody have a peek in there. Everybody look if you want to. But that's what was happening to me. I had that happen. Okay. And once that happens to you and you realize the horse is out of the barn, you cannot get your private information back in where it goes. And I'm not talking about like things like what's on my driver's license and my insurance and my medical records and things like that. No, it wasn't like an identity theft kind of violation. It's your personal life that is just shot out into the world like a fire hose, and you can't get it back. And so for a human being, it's highly, highly, highly traumatic, as anyone would imagine. And some of you who are watching may have experienced it. It's painful, it's humiliating, it's upsetting, and it is traumatizing. It is highly traumatic. It is traumatic, and it affects us 5 different ways. It affects us emotionally, psychologically, biologically, relationally, and neurobiologically. It really messes with our relationships, and it really messes with our psychology and our emotions. And then kind of in the background, the part that might not be jumping out at us so much is how it affects us biologically and neurobiologically. And what I mean by that is that we can have sickness develop that we wouldn't necessarily think is connected to what traumatizing things just happened to us. It might take months or years for the biological after effects to show up. And for me, some of you are aware of this already. One that showed up almost immediately was my hair fell out. I lost more than 50% of my hair. And it was just coming out in clumps. I'd wake up in the morning, it would be on my pillow. But what I was having was comorbid severe traumas at the same time. I'm just going to run down a few of them just to give you an idea of what would make a person's hair fall out. It can be one thing. It can be going through a divorce. It can be having becoming an empty nester. It can be an infertility problem. It could be the loss, the death of an extremely close friend, parent, a sibling. It could be just about anything. But what happened to me was a couple of different smear campaigns on top of ending a relationship with an extremely close friend and having to put a parent on hospice and then being served divorce papers by my spouse and my children going no contact with me, just full no contact, and a few other things. And it was just too much for my system. And my body decided to let go of all of its hair. So I wasn't too worked up about that because I can tell you, I was aware that if this happened to me and I was in high school, it would have had a much bigger impact on me than it had at 60 years old or nearly 60 years old. I believe I was 58, soon to be 59 when it began. And I'm 61 right now. So there was a lot more stuff in it than what I just said just now, but plenty of things that were going on, just like the plate spinner on the stage on the Ed Sullivan Show. All of these different things that are going on, like somebody's running a few different smear campaigns, or a couple different people were running them, and I was involved in them as the target. And also the plates were being spun for several different traumas happening at the same time, all simultaneous or overlapping. Like one is just winding down, but another one is beginning, which I refer to, my expression for that I call it, is trauma stringing. That is something that it will, an explanation of trauma stringing will be in my book, but trauma stringing is a definition that I made up, which means when we have end-to-end or slightly overlapping traumas and they just come consecutively, one after the other, after the other, after the other, leaves us feeling like we can't catch our breath and we cannot get a break. Well, I had a recent visit to my doctor. I ended up having to switch all of my medical and mental health providers because another form of smear campaign was happening to me that I found out about on September 30th of 2024. And I got a phone call from my mental health provider who said, are you sitting down? I got some information for you and I want to make sure that you're okay when I tell you. And I said, well, what's going on? And he said, your spouse keeps calling and leaving messages for us describing your mental illness and insisting that you're very mentally ill and you need to be put on medication, you need to be diagnosed, and possible other treatment, but just absolutely insisting that I have these symptoms of a very specific mental health disorder. And this is not anything new. This person started doing this in 2021, was spoken to about it back then by my different mental health practitioner at that time, and was told, stop it. This is not okay to do to a person. If a person does not have a condition, you have no right to call their provider and say that they do, and keep on enticing other people to call. So 2 of my other relatives got phone calls from him urging them to do the same thing. And they did. And when I was in an appointment, my provider in 2021 said, I hate to tell you this, but your family, there are 3 people in your family that want you to be hospitalized. They want you to be diagnosed with this condition. They want you treated with medication for this condition. And all of a sudden, these people are diagnosing professionals and they've got it all dialed in and they're informing me how to do my job and what to do for you. And it was absolutely shocking to me that people do such a thing. Well, it wasn't to the provider. She said, we all deal with this. Mental health providers all deal with this, where if you're in relationship with, or if you are, related to individuals who have a very high propensity to be dramatic, have a high propensity to be very narcissistic. They believe that they have certain qualifications that they do not have. And they believe that they can call a provider and say, I think this relative of mine or my spouse or my partner or whatever has this condition. And I think it would be best if you bring them in, examine them, diagnose them with it, and get them going on the medication. And if the medication doesn't work, I think you need to put them in the hospital. And that's exactly what they were doing. Well, I thought that was resolved for a while. And here we are, almost 4 years later, and that old bugbear still exists, it's still happening. And so it's the same condition, fixated on the same condition, but really, really, really trying to get me a diagnosis for that condition. And my current mental health provider laughed about it and said, I remember you telling me about this. It's in the notes. It's in the office notes from your previous provider when you switched over to working with me. I'm well aware of it, but I want you to know that thing that you thought was over, it's not. And we're not going to have a person we've never met dictate to us how to do our job. We are medical professionals. We are mental health professionals. And we do not take orders from someone who calls us and leaves us messages. That's a high indicator to us that that person is dealing with some sort of delusional disorder, or because if they were legit, they would have come into an appointment with you. They would have, you would have brought them in to the appointment if you were in relationship with them and they cared about you. So we understand what it doesn't look like this when somebody cares about you. This looks like somebody playing games with you. or somebody being disturbed themselves and having some form of delusion disorder where they think that something is seriously wrong with you and they're desperately trying to get you help. And this was pointed out to me, the word desperate. I am desperate to get help for her in this situation. That's a huge tip off when somebody says that word. But anyways, so I had gone through this form of smear campaign, and some people, I can't diagnose anyone with anything, but this condition or behavior, I should say, not a condition, but this behavior has a lot of the earmarks of a condition which is called factitious disorder imposed on another. Some of you might have been already thinking in that direction. Factitious disorder imposed on another is a condition that used to be called Munchausen by proxy syndrome, okay? And what that means is a person wants to get treatment for another person, whether it's their child, their spouse, their partner, their parent, whomever, doesn't matter. It does not have to be a baby or a child. It can be any human being at all. And a person decides that they want medical or psychiatric treatment for that individual, and they have it made up in their mind already that they are sick, and they have to get a doctor or medical staff to do something, or psychiatric staff to do something about this. Why? Because they say so. And so if you look up the condition factitious disorder imposed on another, okay, it's also listed as FDIA, okay, FDIA, factitious disorder imposed on another. This is a very serious thing where somebody is either malevolent and doing it as part of a smear campaign to cause you to have certain responses from people that are not necessarily going to be very pleasant for you to experience if they are successful at convincing other people that you have these problems. But most practitioners are educated on this form of abuse. Okay, it is a form of abuse to be doing that to another person, but it can also be a form of abuse that is the root cause is a disorder where they can't stop themselves. It's pathological. They just cannot stop themselves from trying to convince other people that someone, and sometimes they hyper focus on just one individual, which is the case with me, but they want that person to be seen as faulty, bad, broken, sick, malfunctioning, out of order. And they use the expression, I am desperate to get, like pointing at me, I'm desperate to get her help. I'm desperate to turn this around. Well, when you've dealt with this for a while, it is significant trauma. It is significantly traumatizing to a human being to have someone see you as sick when you're not. And there's nothing that you could do or say that will convince them otherwise. They are just, I hate the expression, but hell-bent on getting you treatment. They want to be the person, the hero that got all that help for you. And that way, if you are not in relationship with them, they have this fantasy that you're going to be so grateful, you're going to be so thankful and appreciative that you're going to pull them back into your life and say, oh my gosh, you saved my life. You are just so incredible. And you made it so that I'm okay now. And I'm just so eternally grateful to you for doing that for me. This is the payoff that they want. It's a sick fantasy that they have that you're going to be so grateful. The physician or the mental health practitioner is going to be saying to them, I am so grateful that you helped me on this case. This would have slipped through the cracks if you hadn't called me repeatedly and telling me again and again and again, this person needs to be diagnosed, treated, medicated, hospitalized. They really, truly do believe that. And that's why it's a disorder. It's because it can start out as them doing a smear campaign against an individual. But when it gets into now, it's a reality distortion and it's an obsession, and it's pathological. They can't stop it now. They literally are unable to control it. No matter how much you ask them, urge them, implore them to stop, they won't. But what happened with me is 2 different mental health practitioners said to me, there is absolutely nothing that indicates that you have anything even remotely like the disorder that they are wanting us to treat you for. You simply do not show any of the factors of having that disorder. And I said, well, I know that. And it's relief to me to hear you say that, because I need somebody to help me to ground a little bit, to say, we hear you, we see you, we understand this struggle that you're having and that you've been going through it for quite some time. But what ended up happening is when it started up again, the practitioner that I see said, I think it's a real good idea for you to switch your providers and do not share with that person where you go. Do not let them find out. If at all possible, you may need to make sure that they cannot find out where you go to get your medical care and your mental health care. Well, some of you may be asking questions like, well, why are you having anything to do with this person at all? And I will say, because when you are parents to an adult handicapped child and there are benefits involved, an individual has benefits that I was in a very long marriage relationship with this individual. And if I do certain things, I will lose those benefits. And it was worked out where I live my life in a different town, in a different house, and that person lives in another town in a different house. And our lives are separate, just really, really separate. And then the phone calls started. Phone calls, I am so very, very concerned about this person. You've got to do something. I'm absolutely desperate to get her help. It is a way, some people would call this extreme hoovering. A narcissistic person doing extreme hoovering. But when we go through something like that, as I've said already a bunch of times, it's highly traumatic. Having somebody get in your business and try to insinuate themselves into your mental and medical health care, it is very, very, very distressing when that happens. And the more we respond to it, to that individual, the more supply they're getting, because a person who's going through a narcissistic injury, meaning you left them, if you left them because they're so harmful to you and you need to live your life as healthy as you possibly can, and that means distance between you and them, okay? And sometimes they just absolutely will snap, and they cannot handle being separated in that, in that way. And so they keep on rattling your cage and just kind of like, knock, knock, knock. Hey, I'm still here. Please don't forget about me. I'm going to remind you every now and once that I'm still here and that you can never be fully rid of me. One of the things that a domestic violence counselor, actually all 3 of the domestic violence counselors that I've had counseling and support group through, all of them say the same thing, which is, if you have children or a child with an individual and they're still alive, you can never be fully separated from them. So what they teach in domestic violence counseling and support groups is, even if you get divorced from that person, it's still going to be extremely difficult to 100% completely sever, never anything further to do with them again. Because even if you have everything worked out in court, where there's going to be, what would you call it? Monthly maintenance or support being paid by that person to you. If you were the person who was the lesser earner in the relationship, in the marriage, then you're going to still have some occasional contact with them about financial matters or things like that. Some of you might be saying, well, why wouldn't you just handle it all through the attorneys? Yes, in a perfect world, that is exactly how it would be handled, but it doesn't always go that way. So when I got this news about a medical condition that I found out yesterday, I got a phone call. I had to switch to a new provider, and I just explained why I've been switching all of my providers to new providers. Because when you have somebody who's doing factitious disorder against another, type behaviors or extreme smear campaign behaviors, or you're just completely meddling in your healthcare. Once they find out where you're going, then it's a real good idea to remove that from them, because they will start the same thing up. They will keep on going. Or if you stay where you were, they'll just keep on sending letters and calling and things like that. This person even went so far as to have his own psychiatrist contact my mental health providers and say that he's fairly certain that I do have this diagnosis and I do need to be treated for it. And the man has never laid eyes on me, has never met me, and has decided that I have a condition. And the whole thing is just preposterous. But anyway, when we look at a situation and we can see that a person is stressing us so badly, the years of all the different ways that they have done incredible harm, physically, emotionally, psychologically, verbally, sexually, financially, spiritually, legally, doing legal abuse, cyber bullying, smear campaign, all of that stuff, narcissistic abuse to the extreme. When we have these things going on over a long period of time, it makes changes to us biologically. And that's what I started out speaking about at the beginning of this video, speaking about the biological after effects of trauma. They're not always instantaneous. And for me, as you probably have noticed if you've been a recurring viewer, my trauma started before I was born. And I'm still experiencing, even though I live alone, I am separated from my spouse, I live a really good, clean, healthy life. I've devoted the rest of my life to taking care of other people and helping them recover from trauma, while at the exact same time taking beautiful, luxurious, wonderful quality, compassionate, empathetic care of myself. And I love myself. I absolutely adore being who I am and knowing what I know and having the abilities that I have. And I still have the after effects that are biological after effects from trauma. So when my phone rang yesterday to tell me that my labs came back one day after I had done a fasting blood work thing, going to see my doctor for the first time, just having an initial consult just to get to know you, switching providers from one to the next. And they said, yeah, it's a 30-minute appointment. Come on in. We'll get you started, and the doctor will order some labs just to find out your baseline. And it came back with a cholesterol number that was so high they could not tell me. They said, you will be frightened if we tell you. We're not going to tell you the number. And you are diabetic. And I said, okay. So what's the first thing that I did when I hung up the phone? I pick up my phone and I put in a search because I'm a trauma professional and I want to know about the connection between trauma and diabetes. So I put it in my phone and I had an AI overview come up, and while I was speaking, it kind of flew away. So I have to put in the search for it again. I'll be right with you. Okay, so the search that I put in is the connection between trauma and diabetes. So here is the overview. This is what comes up. Trauma can be directly linked to diabetes in a number of ways, including women with PTSD are nearly twice as likely to develop type 2 diabetes as women without PTSD. The more severe and numerous the PTSD symptoms, the greater the risk. PTSD can prolong the body's stress response system, which can increase the risk of diabetes. Yeah. So changes in biology. This is the biological after effects. Trauma can cause changes in the body's hormones, inflammation markers, and immune system regulation. These changes can be common to both mental and physical diseases such as PTSD and metabolic disease. Circadian rhythm. Trauma can cause a reversal in normal circadian rhythms, which can be associated with diabetes. This means sleeping in the daytime and being awake at night. I thankfully do not have that issue, although for a long time I did. High exposure to trauma. Children with type 1 diabetes are often highly exposed to trauma. So there's another one that is about the link between, the result of these, this is the link between adverse childhood experiences and diabetes. And that is an article, a published article, trying to find the location of it in case you're interested. It's quite a long article. It's a National Library of Medicine. This is a medical journal published article, and it's called The Link Between Adverse Childhood Experiences and Diabetes. And that is a very, very long article. In case you're interested in reading it, all you need to do is put in a search in the search bar for the link between adverse childhood experiences and diabetes. Now, I have something else to share with you related to finding out yesterday that I have diabetes, type 2 diabetes. There is a second search that I put in. I was just getting into the car to go for a walk with my dogs for their afternoon walk yesterday when the phone call came. And so when I got to the place where I was going to walk my dogs, we were going to park that's about maybe 3 miles from my home. And as soon as we started to walk, I put in a search in my phone. And this is something that's really important for us to think about. I put in, what is the link between type 2 diabetes and shame? Because I was aware that I had 3 emotions that came up, and they were 3 core emotions. Core emotions or primary emotions are, some people say there are 6, some people say there are 8, some people say there are 9. I'm good with 8 or 9. But I know that shame is one of them, anger is one of them, and fear is one of them. And I was most definitely having a shame, anger, fear response to finding out that I am now experiencing type 2 diabetes. So when I put in the search for a shame response to diabetes, I'm going to show that to you very quickly right now. Again, I have to put in a new search. Okay, so here it is. This is an AI overview. You just type into the search bar shame and diabetes and it comes right up. So here it is. Shame is a common experience for people with diabetes and it can have a negative impact on their quality of life. Causes of shame. People with diabetes may feel shame for a number of reasons, including the physical condition of having diabetes, feeling like they've failed to manage their blood sugar or their weight, believing they caused their diabetes through their own behavior, internalizing the stigma and shame associated with diabetes. And now the next part is the effects of shame. Shame can lead to a number of negative outcomes, including lower psychological well-being, depression and anxiety, and difficulty performing daily self-care, such as taking insulin or checking blood sugar. So if we don't do the things that are now required that we do once we have a certain medical diagnosis, if we don't do them because we got busy, life was happening, really heavy schedule, forgetfulness, sleeping through it, things like that, we can go into a shame spiral. We can get really upset about something like that. And I have to apologize to you that the lighting for my video is really weird today because in upstate New York, it's a drizzly, rainy morning. And on days like that, it's really hard for me to get the lighting right when I'm making a video. But thanks for sticking with me anyways through it. So here's the next part, which is coping with shame. Here are some tips for coping with shame and other negative emotions related to diabetes. You might recognize already that one of the things that really is like nails on a chalkboard for me is when someone refers to emotions as positive or negative. I really try to stay away from that, that dichotomy, positive emotions and negative emotions. For me, they're just simply emotions that I'm more comfortable with and some that I'm less comfortable with. But, somebody might consider happiness a positive emotion. And I look at it as it's an emotion I'm much more comfortable with than I am with shame. But when I polarize them, it doesn't help me. It can actually contribute to the feeling of shame that I feel if I experience an emotion or a feeling. And so I really try to avoid polarizing them and say, shame is a natural response. It's not a negative emotion. It's a natural response to when certain things happen. It's the way we are. It's the way we are. It's the way our nervous system, the way our body works. And all of our feelings, as I said at the beginning of this video, are in the body. And so shame is a core emotion, but it's also a physical response in the body. It's an autonomic nervous system. It's an autonomic response to trauma. One of them is shame. And when we feel shame, we collapse in on ourselves. Our chin goes to our chest, our shoulders roll forward. We try to appear smaller. Our energy goes down. Our ability to interact with other people becomes impaired. We can just go into what we call a shame spiral, and we can drop right out of our daily routine because it's painful. Shame is associated with emotional pain, and it can even be associated with physical pain, but it is not a comfortable emotion to be experiencing for certain. So here's about coping with shame. Here are some tips for coping with shame and other negative emotions, as they said here, but I call them uncomfortable emotions related to diabetes. Pay attention to your feelings. I like to soften that statement. Pay attention to your feelings. Sounds a little bossy. And I like to say, let's notice what comes up for us. Let's just be tuned into ourselves and notice what comes up. When I got this news, what came up for me the rest of the day? What was I noticing? Sadness. I felt like something just really pivoted and changed for me in a direction that I don't want to go. And I felt shame. I felt disappointed. I felt disappointed in myself. And I felt some humiliation and embarrassment because of my my health being out of my control. Talk to your healthcare team about your feelings. Talk to your family and friends. Well, we don't have family that we can trust or that would be compassionate in any way. It might not be the best idea to talk to your family and friends. If you have a family that would immediately shame you for that, it's not such a great idea, because we're already in a vulnerable place when we get this news. Turning to people who don't have compassion or are low in conscience, low in remorse, they might actually leverage this as a way that they can hurt us. I did not speak to anyone in my family. I spoke about it with my best friend, who was incredibly compassionate and understanding. So ask if help is available for diabetes related costs. That's another concern. And then underneath this, it says reducing the negative attitudes and judgment surrounding diabetes can help improve health outcomes for people with diabetes. I'll say it a different way. If we can circumvent the shame, if we can look at the core emotions that come up and make a list of them. And for me, I didn't even need to make a list. I just knew right away. Shame, fear, anger. That's what I was feeling. I feel shame about this. I feel anger about this, and I feel fear. I'm fearful about what organ damage can happen from it. I'm fearful that I'm not going to be able to control my blood sugar. I'm fearful that it's going to interfere with the things that I'm able to do, and I'm fearful that it's going to cause me a problem throughout my aging process. I'm angry with myself because I didn't listen to the advice of medical practitioners in the past. I didn't think it would happen to me. We go into a state of denial where we think, well, you know what, just because it's in my family doesn't mean it's going to happen to me. Just because I'm overweight doesn't mean I'm going to become diabetic. It's not an automatic thing. And we can explain it away, we can will it away, we can push it away, we can go into denial. And then after going into denial, we can feel anger that it showed up anyways. And then the shame that we can feel could simply be related to feeling angry and feeling fearful. We can feel shame just for feeling the emotions that we feel. Not just because of the condition that is now here, but we can feel shame connected to our anger, because especially women, we're not supposed to feel anger, right? We're kind of programmed and conditioned by society. Oh, it's very unbecoming for you to be angry. You're not supposed to feel your anger, express your anger. You're supposed to stuff it down into your pinky toe, make it go away, hide it so nobody else has to feel uncomfortable about your anger. And I can tell you that when I was being smear campaigned, or, the factitious stuff being sent to my doctor, anger was brought up a lot. She's so angry all the time. I hardly even recognize her. What did he want? To get back in the house with me. He wanted the doctor to say, well, I'm going to do what you need to get her to straighten up and fly right so she will live with you again. That's the bottom line. If she's mentally ill, then she needs somebody to caretake her. And I'm volunteering to caretake her So you slap her with the diagnosis, and then I'll get her to let me move back into the house with her, and then I'll take care of her, and I'll be the person who's got everything nailed down. I'm the person who's going to be in charge. So what do I do with my diagnosis of diabetes? Keep it between me and my doctor. And if that individual who likes to mess with my information does find out, they might watch this video. They do find out. I don't have to keep running from doctor to doctor. My new doctor understands that this person likes to do this thing, likes to interfere because they have an agenda, they have a purpose, they have a thing that they want, and they don't mind exploiting me in the worst kind of way in order to get it. But what I'm going to look at now is, can we go back and just look at this big, huge circle that I've drawn, where the trauma that built from the time I was born, all through my life, all of these different traumatic occurrences, experiences, environments, circumstances, situations, relationships, intergenerational trauma, relationship trauma, workplace trauma, medical trauma, just all of it. Accident trauma, a huge part of it. And then all of that building and building and building and building. What's the most natural thing in the world for the body to do? The body begins to have things occur within it that are out of control. It's an out of control situation inside the body. As an after effect of trauma, the cells aren't able to do what they're supposed to be doing in the healthiest way anymore. Can it be reversed? Oh, yes, it can. And I'm going to share that with you now because, oops, I forgot to put this over here where I was sitting. But this is the last part of my video. Even if you don't have a diagnosis of diabetes, this is a fantastic video to watch. It's 18 minutes and 12 seconds long. The YouTube channel you'll find it at is at TEDx Talks. That's the YouTube channel. And the title of the YouTube video is Reversing Type 2 Diabetes Starts with Ignoring the Guidelines. And that's with Sarah Hallberg. And the title includes, I'll just say the title again, Reversing Type 2 Diabetes Starts with Ignoring the Guidelines / Sarah Hallberg / TEDx Purdue U from Purdue University. This is a phenomenal talk. This was the most uplifting part of my day yesterday. And yes, I have to learn a new way to eat. I have to change my diet in a way that I never dreamed I would have to. I didn't want to look in that direction. I didn't want to know. But now that's where I am. And if I follow the guidelines from Sarah Hallberg, she's a medical doctor. She refers to herself at the beginning of the video as an obesity doctor. Well, what does that tell me then? That I need an obesity doctor. I need to get in touch with someone who will be my newest medical practitioner to help me navigate everything that I need to do to reverse type 2 diabetes. So I'll be sharing that with my viewers as I go. And I hope that this discussion today that I've done, if you are experiencing something similar, I hope this gives you hope. I hope that this gives you a feeling that someone gets it, that someone gets the emotional side of this diagnosis, that someone gets the interference and trauma factor part of the diagnosis. It's a lot. It's a lot that happened over a long period of time that brought me to this moment. Am I ready for it? Oh, yeah. Yeah, I am. I'm ready for it. And I'll be sharing the story with you because as a certified trauma recovery coach, I can now share with my viewers that the after effects of our trauma are absolutely very real. They're very serious. And there's a lot that we can do to recover. So thank you for being with me today for this talk. I really appreciate it. I appreciate all of my viewers and subscribers. If you're if you enjoyed this video, please hit the like button, like, subscribe, share it on whatever platform you want. I really, really appreciate it very much. Hit the notification bell and put comments in the comments section. And if you're interested in working with me as your one-on-one certified trauma recovery coach, I would love to work with you. And you can reach me through my website, which is linbouthillier.com. You can email me, lynn@linbouthillier.com. And you can call my phone 716-994-3052 to set up a discovery call where I can share with you lots of information about how certified trauma recovery coaching works and what I can do to help you on your recovery journey. Have the very best day, everyone. Please remember, self-care is never, ever selfish. It's essential, and that you are infinitely worthy of your own trauma recovery. I'll see you in the next one. Bye.